What is up, party people? So we are back in Ruth. We have gone through chapters 1 and 2. We're in chapter 3. That's obviously the next one. Chapter 1, we see how Naomi and her family went away, how Naomi lost her husband and her sons, and how she only had a daughter-in-law that was willing to follow her back home, and how she came back to Bethlehem. So she went away from the promised land where God's promises were for the Israelites, and then came back to the promised land with Ruth, who is now following the Israelite way, God's law. She's adopted God as her own, and she's being faithful to her mother-in-law here. And so there's this kindness and loving relationship between Naomi and Ruth. And it turns out that Ruth is willing to be a good worker, and she goes out and tries to provide for Naomi and herself, and she finds favor with Boaz, who ends up being one of the redeemers of the family, and he's very generous to her in a very kind way. He's not using his position to exploit or do any of that. He's being kind. So Naomi finds out that Boaz is the one who's favoring Ruth, and so she comes up with a plan, which is where we are in chapter 3. So I'm going to read verses 1 through 5. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? Is not Boaz our relative, with whose young women you were? See, he's winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Wash, therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your cloak, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies. Then go uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do." And she replied, "All that you say I will do." So there's a plan here. Naomi has been pragmatic before, and she has, said, "I went away, the Lord's brought me back." She's attributing all that's happened in her life to God, and she's still following a kind of pragmatism. She's not taking a back seat here. She's actually saying, look, this is what seems good to me. This is the right thing. The legal way to do this is for you to appeal to the Redeemer and for us to ask to be redeemed. Now, we find out later that there's a hitch in that plan, and that there's a little bit of steering going on by Naomi here, but that doesn't necessarily make it the wrong thing to do, as long as the right process is followed for the right reasons. And Naomi is seeking to repay Ruth and give, hope to both of them at this point, but she's doing something that is helpful. She's telling Ruth how to behave, and we'll get into what that means. Now, the whole lie down thing, when in Ruth it's saying lie down, it's using a little bit of an innuendo kind of lie down. This is, from what I've read, the same instance of the lie down words that are used in other places where it's referring to knowing somebody biblically or intercourse. And so there is something happening where Naomi and Ruth, it appears, or the writer of Ruth is saying, hey, I'm introducing this kind of sexual tension here. It's obviously a good storytelling technique, but it's an interesting thing because some people try to explain that away and try to highlight the purity of the moment. But I think that it's an important thing to look at because it's not necessarily the intent here. I think that when you read this, it's actually kind of contrasting this tension with the lawfulness and what's actually upheld. So I don't think it really draws I don't think it destroys the purity of the story here. But I don't think you can explain it away by saying it's just a completely innocent use of lie down. I think, and it's used over and over again. So verses 6 through 13. So she went to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had commanded her. When Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came softly and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight the man was startled and turned over, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. He said, "Who are you?" She answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer." And he said, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter, for you have made this last kindness greater than the first, and that you have not gone after young men whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask, for all my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman. And now it is true that I am a redeemer, yet there is a redeemer nearer than I. Remain tonight, and in the morning, if he will redeem you, good, let him do it. But if he is not willing to redeem you, then, as the Lord lives, I will redeem you. Lie down until the morning. So again, it's using this kind of innuendo kind of language to build a little tension here. And I think also to say that this is not even though this is completely honorable, what happens, it could have gone either way. This could have been a completely dishonorable situation for both of them. But because of how they treated it, it is still an honored and pure interaction that happens here. The hitch in the plan of Naomi and Ruth is that there's a redeemer that's closer than Boaz. So there's somebody else with the ability to say, no, I'm going to redeem this family, and he would get the inheritance, and he would also get Ruth in that transaction. This is something that really ruffles our feathers these days. The woman would, I'm not 100% sure on this, but it seems like they would not be able to get the proper inheritance if without a male heir. That's what it looks like. They need a male to have the inheritance, to get Elimelech's land. This promised land inheritance is for that family line. If that family line isn't upheld, the inheritance goes away. That leaves Naomi and Ruth in a really tough spot. And so, again, they're following the law of the day, which is that Elimelech has passed away. Naomi is too old to have children. She's too old to be married off and have children. And so Ruth, this Moabite woman, is actually the instrument through which this household can be redeemed. We also see this in other tales that are mentioned later on here, but Tamar and Bathsheba and all of these, they're foreign women that are brought in and ultimately end up redeeming the lineage of King David and ultimately Jesus Christ. And so, again, to kind of hammer this point home, this is the same verbiage, lay down or lie down, the same kind of thing that's talking. It is kind of sexual innuendo here. It's saying that this tension exists. But one thing that I will point out is that when she says, spread the wings of your cloak, spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer. She's actually saying, marry me. So again, it's very direct. Just as the lie down is kind of innuendo, this is actually a direct allusion to the fact that, or reference to the fact that she wants Boaz to marry her. Hey, marry me, redeem me, have a child with me, let's do this the right way. That's literally what she's saying there. So it's contrasting this kind of tawdriness with the purity and holiness and following the legal process here. And so verses 14 through 18. So she lay at his feet until the morning, but arose before one could recognize another. And he said, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. And he said, bring the garment you are wearing and hold it out. So she held it, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her. Then she went into the city. And when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, how did you fare, my daughter? And then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, these 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said to me, you must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law. She replied, wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today. So again, it's pointing out the good intention here and the generosity of Boaz. He sends her out trying to maintain her honor, trying to maintain his honor. Like, everybody knows she's a worthy woman. And so he's trying to do the right thing here. He measures out barley to show the intention to Naomi that, hey, this is a good idea. Let's do this legally and the right way. So here you go. Again, being very generous. 6 measures of barley would have been a lot of barley. And this whole idea is that Boaz is a generous older man. He might not be the youngest, most handsome man around, or whatever it is. He alludes to that. This kindness is even greater than the last. But she's a worthy woman, and he's trying to do the honorable thing, and they're all trying to follow the law. And I think that's the important part. And I think it highlights that God is not being dissuaded. His sovereign plan is happening, whether he has to use Moabites, Israelites. He's using actually a combination of them. He's using the Israelites, the chosen people, with the rest of the world, the all nations part. And that's what's reviving the lineage of David here, King David and Jesus Christ. And so we see God's plan at work throughout this entire thing. We also see this idea of this generous redemption through somebody who is not even a part of it, who doesn't deserve anything that's happening to her. But because of her faithfulness to God, things are going better. They keep getting better, right? She's committed to following this faithfully, to putting her faith in the God of Naomi and following the law that God gave his people. And so in a world that's, again, contrasted with judges, then we see them doing things the right way and living the right way. So Ruth really, to me, it's an interesting thing because it's contrast. It's a book of contrast, whether it's judges and the horrible things happening in Israel and the lawful, legal way in which people are fulfilling this, the contrast of the tawdriness of the, using the example of lying down with somebody, and the purity and legal approach of doing things the right way. It's all being contrasted here. It's using these contrasts to build a story and to show that ultimately it's God's sovereign plan. And I think that it's commending people for taking the steps of faith and not just living pragmatically. So there's chapter 3. So we're leaving it off with Boaz about to go seek the redemption of Ruth and Naomi. And so we'll jump into that in chapter 4. But put down below what you liked about this chapter, what stood out to you. Like and subscribe to catch all the videos as they come out. And with that, I will catch you in the next video. All right. Peace.